Join us in just a minute for a special interview with Douglas Smith, who plays Marcus Isaacson on The Alienist.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Miss Mary.
Hello, Alienist fans. We're bringing you creepy versions of childhood songs.
Right.
So creepy.
I'm your host, 123 Jackie B, and we have a very special guest with us today, Douglas Smith, who plays Marcus Isaacson on the show. Say hi to the fans.
Hello.
You can find him on Twitter at Douglas the Smith. I got that right? Yeah. And is that your Instagram as well?
It's Douglas the Smithist on Instagram because Douglas the Smith is my private Instagram. So, sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Didn't give anything away.
Sorry.
So let's have the rest of my panel
so happy to be here. Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Miss Candi Marie, and you can find me on Instagram at Miss Candi Marie and on Twitter at Sweet Candora TV.
And hey guys, I'm Alice Ford, and you can find me on Twitter at Alice L. Ford and on Instagram at Alice's Adventures on Earth.
Yes, and I am Takira Shabrae, and you can find me on Instagram and newly to Twitter at Takira_Shabrae.
This song is still playing.
I'm so creeped out right now.
Keep the momentum going.
So the main theme of tonight's episode to me was, what does it take to commit a murder? Because Chrysler seems to indicate to Sarah that we all have it in us to commit a murder. It's just a matter of circumstance. And that psychologically, there are different views on that. Like, there are some people that believe, okay, you were born with a problem that caused you to be I'm trying to think of the
like
name.
A psychopath or a sociopath.
Yeah, a sociopath. That was
Yes.
the word I was looking for.
Like the guy that kills dogs.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Like, you have something innately in you, but he believes that people can be pushed a certain way or another, and it does concern me about Chrysler because I see this obsession where he almost wants to put himself so much in the shoes of the killer that he's thinking too closely like him, and I want him to take 10 steps back.
Well, you know what? He definitely needs to take some steps back because he's pissing everybody off. Hey, he pissed me off because of some of the things that he was saying to some of the people. I'm like, come on, do you want to lose your team? You guys are getting so close, and he's hitting them where it hurts.
Douglas, is the team pissed off at Chrysler right now?
I don't think the Isaacsons are, but I do
Not
think...
the Isaacsons. Maybe not yet.
No, but I think you're right about Sarah and John and Mary and... a lot of them, yeah. The children, I think, are a little nervous.
Did you see the way that child kicked that ball?
It was his mother's head,
Yeah, this is I was supposed to clarify the mother's head.
That was also disturbing because I don't know how to feel about that, and I think that's how we're supposed to feel, because you hear, when you're a kid and you're angry, your parents are like, well, punch a pillow and it'll make you feel better. Or maybe that just happens to me.
No, my gymnastics coaches, whenever they needed you to go harder, they'd be like, pretend the person that you like the least is the springboard and you're going to smash heads.
There you go. So it was I feel like he was using an appropriate psychological tool, but just saying it was the mother's head went a step too far.
Well,
Right.
he didn't say it was the mother's head. He let the child decide.
He did let the child
that's
decide.
That's true.
He
Right.
did. And I think what made us all kind of uneasy was Dr. Chrysler he kind of got a little bit of a passion of good job within himself when he was seeing the kid kick his mother's head against the wall, and even he took a kick at the ball. And so it makes you think, okay, what is Dr. Chrysler envisioning that ball to be? Because he kind of smiled a little bit. It was a side smile when he was watching the boy, and he was like some type of pleasure. It was a little
Chrysler is brilliant, but he lacks a certain level of self-awareness because he's pointing out the flaws of everyone around him, and there's not this willingness to admit the flaws in himself. You really see that in that opening scene with the madam where she's like, oh, you're aroused by me talking about pleasure and pain together, and he's so uncomfortable he has to leave the room.
Well, he did actually admit it. He admitted that when he heard her describing these situations with these other men, he was like, I found the weakness within myself and it brought me pleasure. So he
Right.
did kind of,
right.
I mean, he admitted to us. I think that was the moment of him kind of coming to himself a little bit.
And you know what else she pointed out? His arm. She touched his arm.
We had a fan point that out,
Yes.
Tio, on our comments, which
Yeah.
it's
he
in
was-
the book, and I hadn't been looking
Didn't
for it in
notice.
the series, and I was happy that they decided to
on the
incorporate it.
which video?
This last
Was
one.
it the
yeah,
last
he
one?
actually said, I was surprised that none of you ladies mentioned Chrysler's withered arm. I actually never noticed it until
I
he
didn't
said
either.
that. And then now
Yeah, I
was
just thought
like,
Mary like
oh.
did his shoes because he's like that kind of guy where
Me
he's like,
too.
you do my shoes, and now I'm like, oh, she does his shoes because
Me too.
he can't
Yeah, I
do
don't
his
know.
arm.
This whole pleasure about buttoning his boots. I mean, he can
Well,
button
I mean,
his
you know,
boots
don't
if
forget he has
really...
that weak arm. So going back to that weak arm, you know, she pointed out the weak arm, and then we hear from Roosevelt about the weak arm as well.
The
So
dual,
I feel like we're going to start to see more and more about this weak arm.
Yeah, and
I-
his vulnerabilities.
Exactly. So that's one vulnerability, and he obviously needs help. That's why Mary usually helps him, because I guess maybe he can't do it himself because of that arm.
Right.
Let me ask you guys another question. Did you feel sympathetic to the woman who killed her children, who was pushing the empty pram?
I did.
I know that's a very weighty question.
I did.
but-
I actually took a note about that, and simply because when he talked about the pressure that's put on women to marry and to have children, I was sympathetic. Look, I want to clear this up, guys, for all the viewers out there. In no way am I saying that it is okay to kill
Yeah,
a child,
it is not.
but
it is not.
for a second, I did kind of sympathize with her about the pressure that is put on our society. And I can't even imagine the type of pressure that was put on our society back then to have children, because that's all that women were looked at back then, were just to bear children and to clean the house and just to be a wife.
Right.
So I feel like that was where my sympathy came from. And I have no idea what kind of pressure was put on her by her family.
I think
we have no idea.
Yeah, and having a man with us this evening, I kind of saw you were giving, like, you were itching for it. Well, what was on your mind?
In that scene right there with the pram, I didn't feel sympathy for her. And
Yeah.
she
She
murdered her children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I maybe I'm not deep enough to go to that next level. At least while I was watching it, I just sort of, maybe sympathy. Maybe I felt bad that she was that troubled. I guess that is sympathy. Yeah. Maybe I did feel sympathy. Yeah, that's probably
Dr.
true.
Chrysler finds a way to bring it out of all of us. I
Yeah,
guess.
actually, now I'm going back
Right.
there. Yeah, no, I didn't think that they needed to put her behind bars or anything. I was more thinking a different thing. I was more thinking, is that a metaphor for another case? You know, I wasn't really thinking too deeply into this woman needs to be behind bars or anything. I was more thinking about. I guess I was coming at it more from the wealthy angle. The because someone has wealth, they're able to skirt the legal system.
Yeah.
That's
Which is-
another.
yeah.
I mean, that's another thing that's a theme in this show is you have these people with this incredible wealth, and then you have people who are immigrants, and we're finding out that the killer may or may not be someone who is from incredible wealth targeting immigrants.
Right. And even the press were, kind of pushing Teddy Roosevelt, like, are you going to protect the poor or just the elite?
I'm not gonna lie.
I mean-
it does make me a little bummed out that the press is depicted as vultures in every single
Right.
episode.
In most movies too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I they don't seem like vultures to me because I mean I like the actors who played the journalists. So yeah.
Well, let's go back
We
to
know
that.
they're nice actors, and that's good.
Well, I give one of them in particular. I spent a lot of my time with Jefferson. He plays Link Steffens, the one with the little mustache, the sort of reddish ginger hair.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
He's like,
Uh-huh.
he's here, and he runs down the stairs. Yeah, so I guess I was like, oh, look at Jefferson. He's playing. He's doing good.
Oh, you're not seeing him as the press.
I mean, I was thinking, oh, what a great transformation, because it's a fake mustache, and he totally transforms. He doesn't look really at all like that in real life.
He's good at playing that kind of aggressive character, like as far as like an aggressive press. Kind
Yeah,
of
he seems
guy.
really good. We never had any scenes together, but we spent a lot of afternoons walking through Budapest where we shot it and drinking coffee and
Wow.
stuff. So it was actually a joy for me
Nice.
to watch him and see him perform.
That's great.
That is really good.
Yeah.
You brought up a really good point.
I would like to run down the clues. We get our first clue with your character, Douglas, actually, where you're on the roof of, I forget what that...
It's like the
building is called,
aquarium,
the
or what
city-
it's going to be.
Castle
the aquarium.
Gardens.
Castle
Castle
Garden.
Castle Gardens, yeah.
Castle
Yeah.
Garden.
So where was that? Was that shot in Budapest?
That was actually shot on the it's a fortress called Korom Fortress, and it's on the border of Hungary and Slovakia. So we drove
Wow.
about an hour outside of Budapest to the Hungary-Slovakia border, and so it was straddling it. The river, the fortress straddles both countries.
That's
Wow,
cool.
that is
That's
really cool.
Yeah.
And so you guys are looking down at the side of the building. Now, was that an actual shot off the side of the building, or was that like a CGI thing?
That was a couple of things put together. They had an actual dangling shot off the side of the fortress. They also built a set at our stages in Budapest for when you're closer up, we're actually dangling off something that's not quite as high, and they did forced perspective. They cut between the real and the not real, and they did piece some of that together with green screen or whatever I don't know what color the screens are these days.
Blue, green, white.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was an intercut, but it was a combination of both practical and special effects.
Are you afraid of heights?
No.
Oh, that's good.
No. Yeah. No.
That's good.
Well, so talking about that scene.
I know,
so,
Alice is so happy because she called it.
Yeah.
Because they called that it was a climber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like episode 1, I think we talked briefly about this, and I looked up like some of the old like tools they used to use for rock climbing. So I'm glad that.
They use pitones and things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So.
And that was exactly what Douglas,
I
Marcus,
think you even talked
Yeah.
about the rope
Isaacson
too,
found.
because
Yeah.
later in the episode they find the piece of rope, which I am a terrible.
Wait, in the earlier episodes or this episode?
This episode.
This
right.
episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
They don't-
This
yeah, but-
episode,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I find the rope on the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Well,
was
I
gonna say
think
that's. when
I thought Alice had mentioned rope. And
I
then,
did talk about it. Yeah.
She
and
did.
then in this episode, your character found the piece of rope, and I was feeling so good.
It was
for
like,
Alice.
aha
I was like,
moment.
She's a detective. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
I love it.
I did think though, because my eyes aren't very good, I was like, they found a ball of hair, and then they're like, these are rope bits, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what a ball of hair would have done.
I thought it was hair too. You know,
Okay.
don't feel bad.
Yeah.
I was with you. I thought it was
He's
hair
like
too.
running. The kids are ripping his hair out. This is how
That's why the actors say lines. To
Right.
to
to
just,
help me. To help me.
yeah, just to make it very clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you finding the rope, this is kind of our first time seeing your character kind of solo and investigating
know.
a crime scene.
Yeah,
So
without
this
his
is a
twin.
big this is a big
Why did you
moment.
ditch your brother? Do you
very
have like
scary.
a backstory that you created for why you ditched him?
Well, so it all starts with the book, and in the book they do separate because Marcus is a bit more of a go get 'em action type of person, and Lucius is more of a lab rat. They came from in the novel. It talks about their backstory, why they are doing what they're doing, and they both had different sort of heroes growing up. They're like my hero was like my character was obsessed with cowboy like action novels.
Nice.
That's actually written into the novel, so that gave a nice grounds for. So
That's good.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah. So. So in a TV show you can't show as much in the novel, but it does it made it helpful to motivate why we were separating, and you will see more scenes where I kind of get buddied up with Luke or John, and Lucius hangs back with Dr. Chrysler. But I did miss my brother. As an actor, it was weird because I had sort of set my performance off of him. He was almost like my not mirror, whatever you call it when you like compare everything, like my measuring stick. I don't know. Like I was oriented around his performance. Like his performance informed my performance, and I think so. Being without him felt very like naked, and I think that maybe is how a twin feels. When
Oh
they're-
yeah.
Probably, yeah.
separate.
Oh, I'm sure.
It gave
Speaking
you
of
yeah.
nakedness, we
Are we gonna talk about eating people now?
Well, no, not yet. I was gonna go to your
He's
scene.
blushing,
You had a
guys. Come
very
on.
interesting
Are you going to
scene.
the sex scene?
to the naked scene? Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Naked.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
actually
yeah.
do. I'm so
Esther,
glad
yeah.
you're here because you cleared up a question we had in the last episode. Which
Episode
was,
2, yeah.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
was which character were you sleeping with? And
Yeah,
it turned
yeah.
out that
Yeah.
it wasn't the prostitute that
John slept
that
with.
Right.
John
It was
slept
it was
with.
not
the girl
Esther.
From,
It was Esther.
Oh, it was
Oh, it
Esther.
was Esther.
Esther is the name of the girl I saw on the street, and then followed to the socialist meeting. And
Oh,
Yes.
the
her
one
name's
beside
Esther.
the sign, and she you locked eyes and that sort of thing.
And then
Okay.
I follow her to the socialist meeting, and then she tells me her name's Esther because we're sleeping together, and I say, well, what's your name? And Marcus, and what's yours? Esther. Yeah. Then so they get the hellos during the act of.
Interesting.
and I don't mean to jump ahead, but I do like that at the end of this episode, your brother kind of gives you a Jewish guilt ribbing.
Oh, totally.
I like that character development because when you're building these, I like to call it Scooby Team because I used to watch Buffy when I was younger.
I
so
watched
you're-
Buffy too.
Yeah, so you're building like a Scooby Team, and you have to get to know all of the personalities. So I like those little nuggets that they stick in where he's giving him
He's ripping on him.
He's
Yeah.
ripping
Right.
on him,
Yeah, yeah.
and then Marcus is making some excuse.
Jokes about the Torah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's so unbothered. He's like, I flirt the line. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it. You're the risque brother, and
Yeah.
we love your character. Fans like are raving over your character, and they're so excited that finally see you in that light. We had a few comment like,
Cool.
you know, when is he gonna get his moment? We want to get the backstory on him. So I'm glad the fans finally got that this week.
Yeah, there'll be more. I mean, it just sort of unfolds like a different layer of an onion every week. Yeah.
Episode. We love it. We love it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we kind of saw everybody in their own, like, secularly, I think, in this episode. You know, everyone kind of had their alone time. I think
Yeah.
everyone was also mad at Chrysler, so they all were like,
See, I'm mad
hang
at
out
John
with you.
Moore because there was a moment where we were watching this episode when they go into, what was that place called? The Golden Rule.
The
Golden Rule.
The golden rules where I meet him at. Yeah.
And at first I thought John Moore had gone there alone, and like an episode or two ago, I gave him such a ribbing for going into
The brothel.
the brothel
alone.
by
Alone.
himself, and I was
Yeah.
like, he did not go into here by himself again. And then I was like, okay, he brought back up. He ribbed
But you know,
himself.
he didn't have any police training. You know, he's an illustrator.
Right.
So he
You go and defend him.
right. Okay, so he didn't go through the academy. You know, he doesn't have the same sort of training that the Isaacson brothers have. You know.
He's using what they call street smarts over
Yes.
book smarts.
And he's
Is
also
wh-
wealthy. He was brought up with a silver spoon. You know, he didn't ever even need to have street smarts. He had like, finishing school smarts. You know,
Yeah,
like,
well, yeah.
you know, like
True, too. He just has this edge, I guess, to him, and he just flies off the handle. I guess is what I'm
with
trying
John.
to say with John.
Yeah, he does fly
with
off the
John
handle.
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
We kinda
he's
like it.
injured emotionally from his canceled engagement and.
Right,
Yeah.
Julia.
And we
his
really
brother,
got
yeah.
that
Learned
today
about that.
because we, I think the reason we knew about that was because the actor Luke had given a lot of interviews about his character, so we knew a lot of that background. But in this episode, we actually get like the confirmation of it, and we get more of. Although I do think maybe Chrysler said something last episode.
well, it kind of makes
Yeah,
more sense
I think
now
so.
with the
Yeah.
ring and like
Yeah.
that whole exchange also kind of makes a little bit more sense now. And like what Chrysler said today about just kind of the whole jealousy thing. So like maybe also the ring, aside from being collateral, is like also like he puts it on the woman that he sleeps with to make it some sort of like jealousy, reenactment of like
Role play.
role,
sorta.
yeah, something like that.
I think we called that last episode too. I mean, we are just like chock full of.
But I do
Well, I
think
guess
it also
it's the
has to
sable.
do with the episode's theme of like the pleasure mixed with pain.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because he's reenacting a moment that was very painful for him because it also is intermingled with pleasurable memories as well.
And Dr. Chrysler says that number of times, and even the madam that he met with, if there's some type of vulnerability, then we feed on that, and we do it so much to get the pleasure from the pain over and over and over again. So John, Dr. Chrysler, what does Sarah do? I feel like we're all kind of
I loved
get
her
those
character,
moments
by the
of
way.
that.
I love the
Sarah.
madam character.
Oh, the madam. Oh, yes.
Yeah, she was good.
It
She was so.
was a great scene.
Well, you guys
It was
just
a good
reminded me
scene.
also of back with the baby scene with Sarah, and Chrysler was really like trying to use her own life against her in like that moment of
Yes.
being like, wouldn't you kill a child? really, that woman over there
Yeah.
has everything you don't want. And what do you have to say about it?
He does
So it's
psychologically
Push
push buttons and
Yeah, absolutely.
plays with people.
Are you next?
So
Dun dun dun.
I don't think I'm supposed to talk about future episodes.
You're not. Yeah, it's
to.
a trick. You're very. You came prepared. I like it. And this may be, on the pain. And I'm just curious, and one of our fans was as well, since we brought up Julia, John Moore's ex-fiance. Your cat's name is Julia. Random fact of the day, right?
Oh, yeah.
Did this come before or after The Alienist?
Oh, I've had the cat for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
How coincidental. It's just,
Yeah, no, I've had the cat for over a decade. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so much before, yeah.
We see the love
shout
of
out to
Julia.
Julia.
I know, right?
Oh, yeah, she'll be there when I get home, yeah.
And to go to the chat, Billie Jean, she actually has not watched any of our after shows, but she said that she saw that you were going to be on this show, so she jumped on our chat today to ask you, how did you react when you found out that you got the role for the show?
I was, what was happening? I remember I was happy, and I was excited, and I specifically remember I was driving to audition for a role on the Incredible Kimmy Schmidt. Is that what it's called? The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was going to tape. I have an office that I tape auditions for when the audition's in New York, and I was on my way, and I had actually taped the Alienist audition at that same office, beforehand. And on my way there, I got the phone call that I got the role for the Alienist. So I didn't need to audition for Kimmy Schmidt, but I already had the time scheduled with these people, and so I went to a liquor store and got a 6-pack of Blue Moon, and I brought it to the session, and and I told him, hey, I don't need a tape, and we sat there and we drank a few beers. To sort of,
Nice.
I remember that very specifically. Yeah,
Well,
actually.
That's a fun celebration.
Yeah, I was
That
like driving,
is.
and because I could have just been like call and cancel and be like, I don't need to come, but it was 15 minutes before I was supposed to tape, so I had to pay for the time anyway, so I thought it would be buy them a beer for helping me get the job.
That's
that
amazing.
is
Well,
really
Billie
great.
Jean, there you have it.
I love that story. I just want to capture a couple more things before we move on to the interview portion. And please, if you guys in the chat roll have questions, keep them coming.
Yes.
I love to talk about the love quadrangles on this show because they've set it up where Moore and Chrysler are kind of playing against each other, where Chrysler likes Sarah, but he also likes Mary, and he wants to have them both because he seems to be a person who's used to having everything he wants. I don't know if that's like a correct assessment of him or not. And then John sees that Mary's upset about Chrysler being out with Sarah, and so he decides to take Mary with him to see the video? Edison's Vitascope.
Yeah, I love that scene.
I do too.
An early film projector. It was a real thing.
It's so cool. I love that they were so jumping at water. It was it's a really cool scene.
I think this was my favorite episode because of all the historical tidbits, that and the dentist scene as well.
Yes.
I really love seeing the
The
little
hand
boy
pump.
pumping the thing that you spit into,
Right.
like the dental thing that we're so used to,
And I love
crazy.
I love the touch how the guy still at the dentist, you still have all this stuff in your mouth and you can't talk, and he's coming in and asking him questions, and the guy's answering like, and the dentist is able to understand.
A night with Venus and a lifetime with Mercury. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if
love
I should be
that.
proud of myself or not, but the minute he said that, I was like, syphilis!
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, why? Why do I know this?
Well, there were actually quite a few planet references in this episode. I don't know if that
No,
has-
share.
Were they?
didn't-
Well, other
Well,
than
there
that,
was
or-
another one where Chrysler was talking to Moore in his house, and he has a solar system, and he spins it.
This is true.
and
He
he's
did do that, yeah.
And
You're
I was
right,
like,
yeah.
ooh, then there's another planet.
Yeah, in his office. It was in his office, yeah.
It was a really poetic episode. I think the
It was.
director shot it really. It was a new director from the first 3 episodes. This was the first time somebody other than Jakob directed an episode.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, there were lots of like little tidbits that I really loved. Like I also really love that like whenever Mary's upset, she just like vigorously is chopping vegetables.
Right.
She's always chopping.
She shows
She makes me nervous.
to not speak a word in these episodes. Her way of getting her point across is very clear.
Oh,
Yes.
I was going to ask you about that because I've heard some people say she's not speaking. You know, she's mute.
Right.
Yeah,
I think in the book we referenced it
I'm
in the book,
several
and obviously
chapters
like
into
several
the book, and then I discovered that was why. And so-
Right. The first two, I think we weren't sure.
And I don't think a lot of people were sure. And it never occurred to me while we're making it. That,
Right.
Yeah.
that people wouldn't really catch on. I think at first we had some thought that, something in the past, really affected her and she just stopped talking, which,
I think that is it. I think that is it.
Yeah,
right.
the murder.
So
like,
the murder of her father.
Yeah.
So yeah, we caught on at the third episode, like, why isn't she saying anything? And we finally caught on.
Because she did a few sign signals in this episode. I think that was
episode,
helpful.
Yeah, it was.
was very
She
helpful.
signaled a thank you to John. I mean, that was extremely helpful, and so now we know.
Yeah, it's funny when you work on a show and you just know things because, well, in a book, like
The book too, yeah.
they just tell you in the description line, but it's really interesting to see how other people digest the show and some things that you just sort of the knowledge that you take for granted. You're like, oh wow, no, an audience doesn't know that until they know that,
Yeah,
so it's interesting.
That's like, and obviously you don't have to speak to this, but when we had the man come in the end with the silver teeth, and that's the big reveal at
That's
the end of
the
the
aha.
episode, is that he's put them, he's sent all the characters, our Scooby team, together.
I love it you called them the Scooby team.
He sent the Scooby team together, and they all realize that he's watching them, which is like a certain level of creepy. And then at the end, we have a reveal with who we think is the killer, but we don't know for sure, because to me he didn't seem to resemble the scene earlier.
Right, the hands, because which is
Which I
another
called putting on
sign.
gloves with mayonnaise because I didn't know what was in the jar.
It's like the lotion.
So I wrote in my notes, I was like, he's
mayonnaise.
putting on gloves with mayonnaise.
the lotion, and we had to Alice and I had a moment where we was like, did you see that? Like, we had to compare hands, like, for the sneak peek in the next episode, and that's another clue that syphilis, because ulcers and things on your hands, because back then penicillin hadn't. Yeah, warts and ulcers, because penicillin hadn't been discovered yet. It wasn't until 1928-ish, but yeah, like all of those signs of syphilis, like dementia, blindness, which one of our fans pointed out that she thought that the killer may have been blind, and I never thought of that. And when we heard this One Night with Venus, A Lifetime with Mercury, blindness actually is one of the I don't really want to state the symptoms, but I guess syphilis is one of the causes of blindness, like back then. So that's really interesting.
Do you think that might be a reason why he's cutting out the eyes?
Right, and because the madam it kept referencing if there's something that is vulnerable or something that we're not lacking. I think she specifically put it the cripple. She called it a cripple. The cripple in him is looking for the cripple in another. So that is such that's just piecing it together. He's looking for all of these things that he maybe doesn't have that he's finding in others. So that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember if it was her or Chrysler who theorized that if he had something in his past that affected him, and then he's reacting the opposite.
Yeah, I
way
think
to
Chrysler said
whatever.
that.
Yeah. I thought there were some really interesting questions raised about nature versus nurture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
And we're
this
still, I
episode.
mean, we know at this point it's almost confirmed that he's a cannibal, so
the
he
letter
took pride,
said
yeah.
so.
Yeah,
for-
but is the letter telling the truth? I mean, that's the question.
Or is it a riddle? Like, in my
Yeah.
mind, I was thinking, is it a riddle? Because at first, it'd be too easy, right? Like, for the killer just to write the letter and brag, although we know he likes to showboat because he's now leaving his victims out in the open. He's writing letters, he's leaving things in clues, and he wants to he wants them to feel that he is where they are. So he loves a showboat, but then you're thinking, what else is it? It hashtag means something. I mean, like, there's more to it. So
Yeah.
The other thing I thought was interesting about that whole letter scene is that the son, Mrs. Santorelli's son, tries to stop her from going to the police. And in my head, it was just a little thing where I was like, why is he doing that?
Well,
like,
because remember in the other episode, the police came and beat up the dad.
that's right.
You know,
Right.
so and they were like,
Yeah.
don't.
I have short-term memory loss.
Don't worry.
Right.
Someone
Right.
else forgot
Police are
to.
bad.
Yeah.
He doesn't want help from the police.
Right. Well, the chat is going off right now. They are. We have Nella, Kayla, and Elsa. Yes, Elsa. Elsa is saying the killer's just playing games, and I agree. I think he's definitely trying to rub it into the family's face, especially that poor mother that read that note, because he talks about how he ate the child's ass.
Yeah.
And that was never talked about before.
So disgusting.
that he ate the child's ass, or that any parts of the child's ass
he
was
said
removed.
he marinated it with onions and it fed him for
That was
days.
just wrong
to
for him
be
to.
specific.
That was really, really wrong.
I was getting some Silence of the Lambs imagery going
Yeah,
on.
that was bad. Kayla also said, she said, "What about Chrysler smelling Mary's clothes? That was just weird."
That was her clothes?
It was
I
her
thought
clothes.
It was his
That was
shirt.
Mary's clothes.
That was
Yeah.
Mary's
Yeah, her
clothes,
undergarment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
I
mean,
think we all know that he really likes her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty
we
good
called
to
we
say.
called that last episode for sure. Yeah, it's really strange.
I mean, and I also think that he probably has some feelings of not really maybe being worthy because of his bum arm.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because he's not like a whole man to some other standards. So.
yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I'd like to move on and ask Douglas some questions if we can.
Yeah.
My first question for you is, what was your favorite part about playing this role?
Well, I really liked the mystery when I first read the book, and I guess I really liked. I'm a bit of a history nerd, and I really, really like digging into the history of the time and getting together with the actor who played my brother and the director and sort of coming up with a character biography of when were we born, what was New York like for us, and what country did we come from, and that was really sort of fun, getting to know the characters. When you play a character in a period piece, you can't slack off on those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
When you play somebody in a contemporary piece, I'm not saying I always do slack off, but you may or may not slack off, and it was kind of exciting because you had to sort of raise your game, and it makes it more fulfilling. So that was a fun aspect of the job.
That's great.
Do you have a favorite historical thing that you learned while you were filming this, like about New York history or?
I liked the Castle Gardens thing, actually. That was, I think, my favorite thing. I always thought about immigrants coming to New York and going through Ellis Island, but they came through Castle Gardens before that. And in our period of the show, it is in that in-between period when Castle Gardens has closed. It's no longer the immigration outpost for New York City, and it's turning into an aquarium. And I liked it personally because my great-grandfather, Theodore, came through Castle Gardens in like the 1870s.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
I was just gonna, that was gonna be my follow-up question.
Oh,
so.
yeah. So it was kind of interesting
Wow.
doing some own family research because I always knew my grandfather was born and raised in Brooklyn, but his father came from Germany, and we did the math, backed it up, and so that sort of castle that we're dangling off of was Castle Gardens, and that was where my family sort of took their first steps onto soil in America. Yeah.
That's
Pretty
so
powerful.
great.
That's awesome.
That is powerful.
Do you have any fun set anecdotes for?
I mean, we were there for 6 months. It's for days and days and days. I know, I should have come with one that I had memorized or something. There's a lot. Think about something fast.
Even something from that day, the filming of this episode.
Filming of it. Well, this episode was filmed over many, many, many weeks and months even. Come on, something funny. I'm gonna think of it when I'm driving.
Yeah, feel free to. You could tweet us a little.
Maybe go to the next question because I just don't have anything that I can honestly grapple unless I can't think of anything. I'm sorry.
We can think on it. We'll get at the end of the show. I'm sure it'll come to you.
And we have another really good question from the chat. Billie Jean wants to know, what was it like wearing the clothing, and was it comfortable?
It was not comfortable, but it was a good way to travel back in time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But I have some PTSD from watching some of the scenes today in particular. This was the scorching episode to shoot. Yeah, it was really hot.
Oh my gosh.
Really hot, like unbelievably hot.
Okay.
We actually had some fans comment last week saying they really enjoyed
Yes.
just watching the episodes to see all the costumes. And we actually went to the Paley Center last
Right.
week and actually saw some of the costumes too before the Super Bowl. So
Right.
Cool.
Which is really cool
yeah,
that you
it's
get to
neat.
tell us firsthand about your experience. So
Right.
that's a great way to tie in last week with this week.
Cool. They were beautiful to wear, and I liked wearing them at night and in the. But that whole sequence with me and John on the roof, it was really hot. It was really, really. It was, I mean, we were in LA. It was hotter than LA. It was like LA summer, but with New York humidity. It
Yes.
was like 100 degrees and humid, and
Wow.
and you're just running and you sort of like. The vision goes out a little, It goes in and out,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Was it heavy? Were the clothes, were they heavy?
When the temperature was fine, no, they were actually really, really not. They felt really good. Our costume designer's a genius, and he measured every part of our body, like here, like everything, and it just fit actually really, really perfectly. So, no, they were. It was just maybe. It's not because of the clothes, maybe, because there was crew members in board shorts with no shirt on that were complaining about the heat, So maybe I shouldn't blame the clothes. The clothes were a work of art, and they were just beautiful to wear, and I really am amazed at the talent that was behind the wardrobe department. A lot of the stuff was handmade.
Wow.
Handmade by these seamstresses. They also made the dresses for Beauty and the Beast, so it was kind of funny.
Wow. That's a nice fun fact.
Yeah, because
that
when we
is.
first started filming, Beauty and the Beast came out, and we were there, and so Luke rented out a theater for us to all go and see Beauty and the Beast, and the seamstresses who made all the dresses had to go right from Beauty and the Beast to work on our show, so they actually hadn't even seen the movie yet, because they couldn't go to the premiere, so we were sitting there, and they're like, oh yeah, there's Belle's dress, I made that. And yeah.
I've seen those in person also, and I mean, it makes sense that the same would make the clothing, the costumes for the show, because the gown and the suit was, phenomenal. The detail was amazing. So.
Yeah, they're really amazing at what they do.
Yeah.
I saw from your bio that you started, or that you've done theater. Did you start out in theater, or?
No, theater was more of like a U-turn, not a U-turn, a side sort of. I really started. I'm the son of a filmmaker, so I really started in film and then did theater throughout elementary school, and then did more professional theater while in between seasons of Big Love, and then after Big Love, I got a little bit more into theater, and I'm still always pursuing, plays and things of that nature. Yeah.
And you're screenwriting now too, right?
Yeah. Wait, who told you?
Yeah, we got the dirt.
We're alienists.
We are alienists.
alienists.
That's funny.
We're investigators, for crying out loud.
That's
Come
so
on.
fun. I mean, I started writing scenes back when I was in acting class, but then I sort of stopped for about half of my 20s, and now I've been trying to be a little bit more proactive at finishing ideas. So yeah, I've been more dedicated. Wait, I'm really curious. How did
I do a lot of reading.
That's really funny. That's really funny. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, looking forward to seeing great things from you, having you on the show again to talk about
Yes,
those things.
if you could play, this is one thing I like to finish with, though, with anybody I'm interviewing. If you could play any role, like, in the world, what would you play?
Well, I always wanted to do, like, it's kind of do they talk about H.H. Holmes on this? He was actually a serial killer in Chicago around this
Yeah,
time.
they've mentioned him in the show.
Yeah, I've always wanted to play him. for years and years, ever since I read that book that was about him, The Devil in the White
Oh
City.
yeah, I've read that one.
Yeah, I read it about 6 years ago, and I just started thinking about it, and I heard they were thinking about trying to make an epic movie, but I always thought it would be a really good character study, where you sort of got behind why he did that, because he has some really weird writings that he made when he was in jail before he was executed. It's very weird, because I actually have talked about that a lot. I remember when I did a play in New York, then a writer asked me that, and I had the same answer then, and then now I'm doing a show that takes place in the same time period, but it's a different story, but it's the same time period. It's in Chicago in 1893, so like 3 years before this show takes place. But I don't remember which one of you asked the question.
Oh, I did.
You
She did.
So yeah, I'm looking at the right person. Okay. Yeah, I always thought, I don't know, that would make a really interesting character study.
And it sounds like because you've already done a lot of research for this role, that you could go to somebody and be like, "Look, I already did all this."
Right, you can like
Yeah.
I just need to write the story.
Yeah.
It
And
could be.
I always wanted to play Chet Baker, but then Ethan Hawke did it so well. You know Chet Baker, the the cool jazz singer and trumpet player. And
I've heard of him.
yeah, I always thought that would be really fun. But Ethan Hawke was in a really good Chet Baker bio movie that came out like last year, and so yeah. I don't really think I don't think the world needs another one.
Yeah.
I don't think the world needs another Chet Baker movie, that soon. So I'm sort of kissing that one goodbye. Yeah.
all of your or not all of them, but it's your kind of interest in forensics and history that shows, because I mean obviously you've done CSI, you're doing this.
I've done a lot of those. Yeah.
I see that's kind of a trend, and so I, to see something on screen that you've done or written, then that wouldn't surprise me. It's kind of be interested to see it, but that's something that I'm assuming that you kind of have a thing for.
Yeah, I'm not a creep or anything.
No, I do think but I mean to clarify,
Being a history buff isn't
I
a
do
creep.
think like true crime is fascinating.
Yeah,
it
That's why
is.
so many people listen to Serial.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That was a huge phenomenon. Yeah, I remember when the first season of that came out. Yeah, that was. Yeah, I couldn't stop listening to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one. I mean, I think of like a lot of top-selling books and a lot of like the Capote in Cold Blood. Like a lot of them.
In Cold Blood, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them are true crime stories. So it's just from to tie it all in from a psychological perspective, we're like interested in our own studying our own natures.
Exactly.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. Before we go, we have to wrap this up, but I wanted to remind the viewers about our giveaway. Alice, can you remind them of where to go
guys,
and what to do?
remember we are doing a giveaway. We're going to be giving out 4 of the novels, The Alienist. And to enter, there's actually a link in the description of this YouTube video. So all you have to do is click on that link. It's going to take you to a new page, follow the directions, and then don't forget to put a comment on either this video or one of the other episodes, or you can also comment or write a review on our iTunes on the podcast. And then once you do that and then enter on the link, then you'll be entered, and we're going to make a drawing out of a hat for the winner.
A vintage hat.
That's right.
And is there a fan of the week this week?
Yeah, fan of the week. We actually
every week we do a shout out to a fan of the week.
Oh, cool.
we already kind of mentioned him, Tio Baracho. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, but he was the one that was mentioned about the withered arm. So he kind of brought that to fruition, and then also said similar to what we had talked about last week, that it makes him miss the Nick and Penny Dreadful.
Yes.
Which I totally loved both those shows too, so I feel you on that one.
We get that a lot, actually. We've had
The-
a couple
one
of
of-
people comment that.
One of the things that is super fun for the fans and for us about this show, I think, is because I'm like halfway through the book, and then they haven't read it yet.
Yeah,
or
but I'm starting. I think on page 92, if I'm not mistaken.
I did that on
right
purpose
here.
because I don't want to know who the killer
I know. I was
is.
gonna
Right.
say I would almost recommend waiting
Right.
until you finish the show, because it might confuse things.
I'm actually
Yeah.
stopping as the episodes go. So I'll read up and I'll be like, oh, that's beyond what I've seen, so I'm stopping.
No,
which
it's
is
smart.
it's a very exciting way to read it because you learn all those background details, like why Mary wasn't talking, but then you get to still, with all the fans, and here we get to still ruminate over who's the killer and what do these things mean.
Nice.
Right. And I think last time you were about there, and I was like trying to catch up with where you are so I could do kind of the same thing, but no spoilers. So
Yeah, we don't want to give spoilers.
No
here.
spoilers.
It's a spoiler-free zone.
spoil-free zone.
Do you have anything else you would want to promote or anything?
No,
you know?
no.
Just keep watching The Alienist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then tune in here afterwards. You can find me, 123 Jackie B, on all platforms. Ladies, where can the people find you?
Yes, you guys can find me on Instagram at Miss Candi Marie and on Twitter at Sweet Candor TV.
And you can find me at Alice L. Ford on Twitter or Alice's Adventures on Earth on Instagram. And if anyone out there is writing a script about H.H. Holmes, we've got a great actor for you here.
Absolutely. And you can find me, Takira Shabrae, at Takira_Shabrae on Instagram and newly to Twitter.
Yay! And Douglas, they can find you at Douglas the Smith on Twitter, and then at Douglas the Smith something else.
Smithist.
Yeah, I'm the most Smith there. Yeah, Douglas the Smithist. Yeah.
Douglas the Smithist on
Yeah,
Instagram.
yeah,
Thank
on
you guys
Instagram,
for joining
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this interview, and we hope you tune in next week for our recap of the next episode of The Alienist.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.